Of all the virtues we can learn, no trait is more useful, more essential for survival, and more likely to improve the quality of life than the ability to transform adversity into an enjoyable challenge. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, Walker. Resilience is the key to a well-lived life. If you want to be happy, you need resilience. If you want to be successful, you need resilience. You need resilience because you can't have happiness, success, or anything else worth having without meeting hardship along the way. To master a skill, to build an enterprise, to pursue any worthy endeavor, simply to live a good life, requires that we confront pain, hardship, and fear. What is the difference between those who are defeated by hardship and those who are sharpened by it? Between those who are broken by pain and those who are made wiser by it? To move through pain to wisdom, through fear to courage, through suffering to strength, requires resilience. The benefits of struggling, of being challenged, afraid, pained, confused, are so precious that if they could be bottled, people would pay dearly for them. But they can't be bottled. And if you want the wisdom, the strength, the clarity, the courage that can come from struggle, the price is clear: you have to endure the struggle first. You bear your struggles. And because they are borne by you, they can feel pressing and heavy to you in a way that they are for no one else. But you have to remember that while they are yours, they are not unique. Your struggles are very much like the struggles of those who went before you, and they are very much like the struggles of those who will come after you. Every human being from the beginning of time has suffered pain and hardship, difficulty and doubt. And in the record of mankind's struggles our forebears have left clues in stories and philosophies and poems and plays and paintings and songs. I like the way Nietzsche put it: look at those works as experimental laboratories in which recipes for the art of living have been thoroughly practiced and lived to the hilt. The results of all their experiments belong to us, as our legitimate property. All of this wisdom belongs to us. It doesn't belong to experts or professional scholars or people who spend their days reading books. It belongs to any one of us who is willing to go out and get it. This wisdom comes from Aeschylus and Aristotle and Homer and Confucius and Montaigne and many more. It's in the Psalms and in ancient Greek tragic plays. I'm drawing on them not because wisdom becomes wiser when it has a famous name attached to it, but because these people came by their wisdom the way the rest of us do, by acting in the world, by struggling, and by reflecting on their struggles. They fought, worried, prayed, got involved in politics, scraped to find work, lost people they loved, got sick, got injured, tried not to fear death. If the wisdom they brought back from their struggles was extraordinary, the struggles themselves were ordinary. Your basic rubber meets the road stuff of life. It's not too different from what you've been through, Walker. I can't speak for Aeschylus or Epictetus or Aristotle. But I am convinced of this: they would have hated having their wisdom confined to classrooms and textbooks. This is wisdom about how to live. And it's your property as much as anyone's. It is yours. Take it. Use it. Culture was originally a word for the tilling and tending of the land. Later, people made an analogy and suggested that you could cultivate yourself. So culture also came to mean the things that you could see, listen to, read, learn, try, and practice in order to make yourself better and to live a fuller life. A great scholar wrote that the desire for culture is innate. We all want to touch and taste and hear and see the things that can make our lives richer. One of the things that was most striking to me in the military was how many very smart people had been made to feel dumb as they became adults. At some point in their lives they tried to cultivate their minds and found a giant stop sign reading "You're not smart enough to enter here." Their response was, "Well, then screw you." And the absurd result was that they walked around mouthing abstract grudges against professors or book learning or colleges, and all the while they've got a book of Seamus Heaney's poems next to their rack, stashed under a stack of porn. We can do better. Everyone can learn. We can all cultivate our character. People of action require a sound mind and a strong will as much as a healthy body. Any nation that draws too great a distinction between its scholars and its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. We all need courage and wisdom. Compassion and strength. We don't look back because life was better in the time of Aeschylus. In fact, in almost every way, life is better today. But to realize the potential of the present, we need to heed the wisdom of the past. Whatever struggle we have gone through remains, at heart, a human struggle. When we see our struggles in the stories of those who have gone before us, we feel less alone. We begin to see that there are sources of wisdom all around us. When we first talked, I told you to get a copy of Homer's Odyssey. Along with the Iliad, it's the first piece of literature in the Western world. It tells of the journey of a man coming home from war, the beasts that threaten him, the women who tempt him, the gods who curse him, the suitors who plague his house, the friends he meets along the way. I've never seen anyone more moved by the Odyssey than my friend Mike, who served with me in Iraq. When Mike came home to a life without purpose and without direction, one of his friends committed suicide. Mike picked up Homer, and he discovered that, as long as there has been war, warriors have found the journey home, the journey back to normal, as trying as battle itself. People have walked this path for thousands of years. They've earned wisdom, and it's waiting for you. At the same time, we have to be clear about what you can and can't expect from a guy like Homer. Homer wrote the Odyssey about Odyssey's struggle. There's a lot you can learn from it, but you aren't a Greek soldier coming home from Troy on a wooden warship. Homer can offer you insight, perspective, reflection. But you are going to have to live your answer to your own life. You know how, at the end of a book or a magazine article about training, the author sometimes lays out a sample training plan that tells you how many miles to run each day and what kinds of exercises to perform. Well, there's no training pre-program at the end of the Odyssey. And there'll be no training program here. Sometimes I'll suggest and even insist on specific exercises that we might do. But since I've been home, I've learned from working with hundreds of veterans that no one can build your resilience for you. I can point you in a certain direction, maybe draw you a map and give you some ideas. I can't carry you where you need to go. For this to work, you're going to have to take what you learn and build your own program for your own life. No one can do that for you. When Aristotle gave his great talks on the nature of the good life, which were collected as the Neo-Archean Ethics, he began by making one thing clear: there is no simple equation for the good life. The discussion can only be as precise as the subject matter allows. Aristotle's students were asking for rules, formulas, guarantees. He told them there was no such thing. We shall be satisfied to indicate the truth roughly and in outline, since our subject and our premises are things that hold good usually. The educated person seeks exactness in each area to the extent that the nature of the subject allows. Math is a subject that allows for precision. If I ask you what's 7 times 7? You know the exact answer, 49. But what if I ask you, how do you deal with fear, life, and the subject of resilience, rarely allows for perfect precision. Real life is messy. Attacking your fear can lead to courage, but there is no equation for courage, no recipe for courage. It gets mixed up with anger and anxiety, with love and panic. This isn't an excuse for sloppy thinking. The virtues have been the subject of rigorous, disciplined thought from before Aristotle to today. But when the question is, how do we live a resilient life? We also have to be ready to accept ambiguity and uncertainty. There are strategies for dealing with fear and pain. There are strategies for building a life rooted in purposeful work. There are strategies for building a home that is happy even when things are hard. But the strategies won't reach into your life and resolve your fear or your pain. You have to live your answer. And look, Walker, nobody's ever going to hand you a prize for resilience. There is no certificate. No t-shirt. And don't even think about a tattoo. There will be no line to mark the point in your life at which you got resilience. With resilience, you and I are not in search of an achievement, but a way of being. Remember all of this when you go to live your own answer. You demand a lot from yourself. In this case, you're going to need to be patient, even kind to yourself. You won't be able to judge most of what you do by a standard of imperfect or perfect. Usually our standard will simply be worse or better. But better sounds good, doesn't it? A masterful warrior carries everything she needs and no more, just as a masterful painter uses all of the paint that she needs and no more, and a master chef uses all of the ingredients that she needs and no more. In the same way, a masterful philosopher will use all of the words that she needs and no more. I am not a mountain climber, but a few years ago I had the idea that I might want to climb seriously, so I started to read and to train. I've climbed a few glacier-covered mountains in the northwestern United States with professionals. One of the things that you learn from professional climbers is the discipline of packing well. Tools are helpful when you climb. Your sleeping bag provides warmth, your lantern provides light, and your gloves provide protection. Lose your footing and your axe can save your life. Every tool has a purpose, and almost any tool can be helpful. Every tool also has weight. Standing at sea level, an axe in your hand feels like a feather. At 12,000 feet, hours from the summit, an extra pound in your pack feels like an anvil. In the same way, words have value. The right words can right your balance. The right words can light your way. But words also have weight. In our life and work, we have to carry what is essential, and leave much of the test behind. In these letters I've tried to strip these thoughts to their bare essentials. You'll decide which ones are worth packing for your journey. One of the most famous scholars of the ancient world, and, I think, one of the most insightful, was Edith Hamilton. This passage is from her to you. When the world is storm-driven and the bad that happens and the worst that threatens are so urgent as to shut out everything else from view, then we need to know all the strong fortresses of the spirit which men have built through the ages. The eternal perspectives are being blotted out, and our judgment of immediate issues will go wrong unless we bring them back. I want to call your attention to one of Hamilton's phrases, fortresses of the spirit. Cut off from the wisdom of the past, we can feel overwhelmed by the incessant clatter of the present. But look, those who went before us left us a gift.
A truly new and original book would be one which made people love old truths.
Marquis de Vauvenargues, 1715–1747. One of the good things about buds, about training in and around the ocean, about having to swim 50 meters underwater or having someone rip your mask from your face and turn off your tanks when you are swimming deep, is that it gives you a healthy appreciation for oxygen. Surrounded by oxygen, we rarely notice it, though we desperately need it. At a moment of exhaustion, we take a long, deep breath and we feel better. Try it now. True. The same can be said for wisdom. We are surrounded by an abundance of wisdom that, if not as close as air, is almost as accessible. Seneca was a Roman philosopher who wrote down his thoughts on living in letters to his friend Lucilius. The problem, Seneca was told, was that a lot of his advice was, well, obvious. Seneca had a great response. People say, what good does it do to point out the obvious? A great deal of good, for we sometimes know facts without paying attention to them. Advice merely engages the attention and rouses us, and concentrates the memory, and keeps it from losing its grip. We miss much that is set before our eyes. If a piece of wisdom has survived for generations, if it has helped make sense of lives separated by vast distances of time and space, that's a sign that it works. The new has no special claim on the true. As you read through these letters, you'll find that I haven't uncovered a secret formula or revealed a hidden way. Instead, I'm just trying to direct your attention to the wisdom about resilience that is already all around us. So now, step back with me for a minute as I try to explain what we're doing here together. These letters, the back and forth, the discussions, this is philosophy. Today we think of philosophy as something that happens in a classroom and nowhere else. We think of philosophy as a discipline of sitting and thinking, reading and arguing. But there was a time when philosophy was more than just talk. During the Golden Age of Greece, philosophers were less interested in sitting and thinking. They were more interested in thinking and living. As a practical matter, the Greeks usually did not read philosophy in the way that you are reading this letter, silently and to yourself. Reading philosophy meant reading aloud to others, practicing philosophy meant living in a community. The emphasis was not on the words alone, but on the effect of the words. Did a philosopher help people to examine their lives? Did that examination lead to happiness, to flourishing, to meaning? If it did, it worked. If it didn't, then it didn't matter how clever the words were. Of the ancients who practiced this kind of life, one of my favorites is Epictetus, who started life as a slave and ended it as the wisest philosopher of his say. Here's what he told his students about what they were trying to do together.
The carpenter does not come up to you and say, "Listen to me discourse about the art of carpentry," but he makes a contract for a house and builds it. Do the same thing yourself. Eat like a man, drink like a man, get married, have children, take part in civic life, learn how to put up with insults, and tolerate other people.
The test of a philosophy is simple: does it lead people to live better lives? If not, the philosophy fails. If so, it succeeds. Philosophy used to mean developing ideas about a life worth living, and then living that life. It still can. The intention in reading and thinking and living this way is not so much to build an argument as it is to open a door. There is no fancy talk here, nothing that requires any specialized knowledge to understand. Philosophy can be done in what my high school English teacher Barbara Osberg used to call simple nickel words. Philosophy should speak to the worries of ordinary people. And good philosophy, hard, clear thinking, will address ordinary things in an insightful way. It will show us new possibilities for living. The question is not whether you have a philosophy. Everyone has a philosophy. Some people live the philosophy, "I'm going to accumulate as much money as I can before I die." Some people live the philosophy, "I've gotten good at one thing, and I don't want to try anything new." Some people live the philosophy, "I'm going to keep my head down and not upset anyone." Of course, when you spell it out like that, a philosophy can look a little ridiculous. But that's the point, we learn a lot about the philosophies we're living if we spell them out. Ridiculous philosophies, dishonest philosophies, destructive philosophies have their tightest hold on us when they're invisible. Then there are philosophies that work, that produce what they're supposed to produce, real happiness. Thoreau said that the best philosophies solve some of the problems of life, not only theoretically, but practically. We can tell a philosophy is working, he said, if it produces a life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. The question is, are you aware of the philosophy you have, the assumptions, beliefs, and ideas that drive your actions? Are you aware of the way those assumptions, beliefs, and ideas add up to shape your life? Can they stand exposure to the light of day?
The worst form of stress is an absence of stress, because the feeling that there is no life before death gives rise to a despairing feeling of emptiness in the face of the void.
Said Boris Cyrulnik, there are a few things that human beings must do to live well: breathe, sleep, drink, eat, and love. To this list I'd add, struggle. We need challenges to master, and problems to solve. If we are trapped in a life where everything is provided for us, our minds fail to grow, our relationships atrophy, and our spirits deteriorate. We can last only a few weeks without food, only a few days without sleep or water, only a few minutes without oxygen. Without oxygen, sleep, water, and food, our minds and bodies begin to break down. If we go without any of these for too long, we die. I believe it's also true that without some sense of meaningful struggle in our lives, something inside us begins to break down, a part of us begins to die. Yet it's amazing how adaptable human beings can be. When we are kept from doing hard and meaningful work, perhaps by living in a prison of idle comfort, by drinking to excess, or by spending endless hours in front of video games or the internet, people still find ways to eke out an existence. In the long run, though, deprivation of purpose is as destructive as deprivation of sleep. Without purpose, we can survive, but we cannot flourish. When I was 20, I lived and worked in a Bosnian refugee camp. All the refugees had seen brutality and destruction. They had lost everything they ever owned. Many had lost friends and family. And now they were trapped in a camp, living in shacks, feeding on bread and rumors. Everyone suffered. Because I was young, there was a lot that I probably didn't see accurately, and there was certainly a lot that I didn't know. But I was struck by one thing. It seemed that the people who were doing best in the camp were often the parents and grandparents of very young children. They knew that they had to wake up every day and be strong for someone else. The people who had the hardest time were the young adults and older teenagers. They felt that their lives had been cut short. They woke up every day with no prospects for a job or for school. Marriage seemed to make little sense. I remember them at a party in the camp's common room, downing their beers and then smashing the bottles on the concrete floor. The war had made them aimless, and aimlessness hurts. The teenagers who were doing the best were often those who found something else to do. They volunteered in the kindergarten or coached the youngest kids as they played soccer. The people who did the best, in other words, found a way to live for something at a time when a lot of people around them didn't know why they were alive at all. Would you spend a weekend in the backyard with a cooler full of beer if you knew that your neighbors needed you? You told me yourself that when you started coaching you began to see more clearly and to live more cleanly. You need to be needed. Everyone does. You need a worthy struggle in your life. And look, Walker, this isn't a problem just for refugees or for you. In the most prosperous moment in human history, tens of millions of people fail to flourish for lack of noble work to do, for lack of meaningful, hard, struggling engagement with the world. We all need something to struggle against and to struggle for. The aim in life is not to avoid struggles, but to have the right ones, not to avoid worry, but to care about the right things, not to live without fear, but to confront worthy fears with force and passion. One of the reasons you are suffering right now is precisely because the purpose of your struggle is unclear. What are you working toward? What are you fighting for? Who are you going to be? These are big questions, and you can't answer them quickly or glibly. But if you want to live in a flourishing life, you will have to answer them. That's where philosophy can help. What you will become is a result of what you are willing to endure. Are you willing to work hard? To think hard? I know that you are. You always have been.